Hi, everyone. Welcome to tonight's virtual event with Brookline Booksmith. We are lucky enough to be celebrating not only the opening of Praise Shadows Art Gallery, but also the Guerrilla Girls' first book, Guerrilla Girls, The Art of Behaving Badly. My name is Bree, and I am the Assistant Events Director at Brookline Booksmith in Brookline, Mass. If you're familiar with our store, welcome back. And if this is your first time joining us, welcome. We're very happy to have you all join our community this evening, and we appreciate your support of the authors, artists, and independent bookstores and galleries for your purchases and attendance. The chat and question box are open, so feel free to make use of those. Remember to set your chat to all panelists and attendees so that you can talk to everyone else in the audience, and please drop your questions into the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom window. The chat can move really fast, and we don't want to lose any of your great questions. Please note that Brookline Booksmith has a very strict policy against abusive behavior and language, and at our discretion, any attendees can be removed from an event for partaking in such behavior. Praise Shadows Art Gallery is Boston's newest art gallery, opening December down the street from Brookline Booksmith, our new neighbors. They are emphasizing exhibitions by emerging and mid-career contemporary artists, a retail space for art books and lower value works made by artists, and mentorship of young talent in the greater Boston area, helping to make art accessible to everyone. The Guerrilla Girls are an anonymous artist activist group who use disruptive headlines, outrageous visuals, and killer statistics to expose gender and ethnic bias and corruption in art, film, politics, and pop culture. They believe in an intersectional feminism that fights for human rights for all people and genders. They undermine the idea of a mainstream narrative by revealing the understory, the subtext, the overlooked, and the downright unfair. Tonight we're celebrating their first book, Guerrilla Girls, The Art of Behaving Badly. And it's the first book to catalog the entire history of the Guerrilla Girls, all the way from their proactive street campaigns to unforgettable media appearances and large-scale exhibitions. So it's my pleasure and Brookline Booksmith's pleasure to welcome you all and the Guerrilla Girls and Ing Ru. Take it away.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to Bree, Brookline Booksmith. My name is Ing Ru Chen. You all can call me Ing, and I'm really, really honored to be here. This is the inaugural event for the gallery, Praise Shadows Art Gallery, which is in the Boston area for those of you who are tuning in from all over the world. I know people who are tuning in from Taipei. I think I saw somebody from Turkey. This is just incredible. And you know, this is purely because of the love and enthusiasm for the Guerrilla Girls. And I want to thank the two co-founders here with me, Rita Kahlo. I believe you're here on the East Coast with us.
Yes.
And Katja Kolwitz, who is on the West Coast, so representing the two, basically the two ends of the United States that are really into not Donald Trump. We're not talking about politics here, but we will talk about politics eventually, because this is what it's all about. And as an art history major in college, I have to say, you know, it wasn't my curriculum, unfortunately, and the was something I had to learn about during my time working. And I'm so happy to find you guys. Is this a dog we need to hold? Because
yes, I'm so sorry. These Zooms are up close and personal.
I know, I love dogs.
Here's my little puppy. So anyway, she'll be very happy now. Sorry.
Okay. So I just wanted to briefly talk about the gallery. The Guerrilla Girls thought that was important, and I'm so honored that you think it's important, and I just feel like that's an amazing blessing. This is a complete labor of love that I decided to do only as close as July of this year. I was never a gallery person. I worked in museums, I worked in lots of other places, but galleries for me were an unfeasible thing to do because I lived in New York for 20 years. But when I moved back to Brookline, which is where I was raised, I recognized this incredible community of curators, museum directors, artists, and then I have an incredible landlord who believed in me and gave me basically the pandemic rate for this space, which used to be a GNC vitamin shop. And now we're giving life and vitamins and nourishment to the community in a whole different way. So I'm so excited. I'm also really honored that Brookline Booksmith agreed to co-present this with me. They have the capability, but they also just have the immense respect of this community beyond Brookline. And, you know, Brookline Booksmith has been around for decades. I have been a customer since I was a kid. My 11-year-old wants to work there someday. It is just so important to me that we have these partnerships in the community between cultural venues. That's how we thrive and how we survive. So that's me in a nutshell. The gallery will open December 9th with a solo show by an artist called Jared Key. It's beautiful cement-based works that are frescoes about Black queer folks, and it's called Chosen Family. So I encourage everyone to check out the website and to come up to Boston if you're able. But now we're going to get started talking about the Guerrilla Girls. There's so much to unpack, and we only have about 45 minutes total before we go to a Q&A. So first, I'd like to formally welcome both of you, and I would like to ask one of you to give us a very brief explanation of why, when, and how you started the Guerrilla Girls.
Okay, I'll do that. But first, I'd like to say that this is our 6th book. It's
Right.
not our first, but it is the first book that compiles all of our works in one, you know, between 2 covers.
Right.
The Guerrilla Girls started in 1985 to combat the sexism and racism that we realized was rampant in the art world, and we started out by putting up posters in the streets of New York that were really intended to change people's minds, because at that time most people thought the art world was a meritocracy, and that whatever they saw in museums or galleries, whatever critics wrote about, had to absolutely be, you know, the best of the best. And if women and artists of color were not part of that dialogue, well, it was just because they weren't producing work that was of high enough quality. Well, we knew that wasn't true, so we decided that it was time to wake people up. So we did these in your face posters, put them up on the streets, claimed the streets, and to our amazement and great joy, all hell broke loose, and everyone started talking about them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Kata?
Well, we had a new idea about how to do political art. We saw that what was being done right now about the issues we cared about wasn't working.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easy to look back on it now and see how great that idea was. Then we thought nobody would even like it and it wouldn't even matter. But the idea was, don't do something that really interferes with how you've looked at something your whole life. So we start with an outrageous headline. We don't write do boring political art that just points to something and says, this is bad. We developed a way of using a headline that grabs you, pair it with an outrageous visual, and prove our case with killer statistics. Right. And in a million ways, hundreds of ways, we've just kept on doing it with incredible colleagues and members of the Guerrilla Girls all of these years, and expanded our critique, deepened it. Sometimes what we do doesn't work, but a lot of times it has worked.
Right, and since '85, it has. I mean, you've never taken a pause, right? It's continued ever since you started.
Absolutely, because the problems, you know, haven't changed. They've evolved, and you know, at first we were talking about the lack of women and artists of color in galleries, and slowly we did a book about female stereotypes. We wrote an art history book. We started criticizing museums, and we're now realizing that, you know, much of the source of exclusion has to do with museum and gallery culture, and where the art world fits into our socio, you know, economic strata, and the way art is used in our culture now.
Right. I'm going to take a pause here, though. Frida, I've been told by some people, if you could, do you think you could remove your mic? Because they said you might be a little muffled.
Oh, all right.
We'll try that and see if that's better.
Okay.
I mean, thank you for introducing that. And I know, basically, we're here to talk about this gorgeous book, which was published by Chronicle. And it is this beautiful compendium of this rich, rich history. And it's a great look at the practice of activist art. One thing that I love about this is that you too can be a guerrilla girl, because in the back, there is a lovely mask that you can pull out and and use. And right now, I just want to do this all the time. But when you were starting out in '85, give me the lay of the land really quickly. Like, what did this look like? If you walked into a gallery, if you walked into the Met, into the MoMA, like on a visceral level, what did it feel like to you as a female artist who had done just as much work, as much education as your male peers? What did that feel like and look like to you?
The thing is, there's no lack of fantastic, incredible artists out there. The world of artists is great, but the art world sucks. It's run by the super wealthy for the super wealthy, and it's all about exclusion rather than inclusion. And we think we want to honor the work of everyone we know. We feel we represent all artists, and there's just no lack of this thing called talent, which the powers that be, when we started out, tried to say we didn't have, based on gender and race.
The gatekeepers at that time for you, were they professors? Were they, I don't know, do you have MFAs? Like, are these things that really are deeply rooted even in education? I feel like it goes beyond just getting your career started. It's probably where you went to school or how you went to school.
Well, I don't know about us, but the art world in 1985, the work, of course, was always interesting when you went into galleries and museums, but it was one-sided.
Mm-hmm.
It was really one-sided, and if you started to think about, well, where are the women's voices? Where are the voices of people of color? They weren't there. So there were big holes in the art world, and the gatekeepers at that point, they were a kind of compendium, a mixture of critics and gallery people, and of course collectors were always the driving forces, even more so now. So those filters were all kind of in place, and they were not even thinking about whether the entire story of our culture was being told. And we realized that it was super, super limited. Now, in the world of knowledge, the production of knowledge, which is, academia, yes, there were a lot of, feminist and American studies and African American studies scholars who were working on those issues, but it didn't filter into the larger mainstream art world. So we really had to dig away at that, and poster after poster talk about what we were not seeing, what was not there, what was lacking, what was left out.
When you were little girls, did you think to yourself, I want to be a famous artist when I grow up, and this is how I imagine my career?
No, I personally, I thought to myself, I want to be an artist, and I want to do. I mean, there was no commercial impetus at all. The idea is try to change the world and look, explore things in your own different way, and hopefully someone else will be interested in it too. And when we began, there was a huge alternate art world, just like there is now. Street art is the most popular art in the United States, not the fancy stuff that you see in museums. And at that time, because the system wouldn't accept radical art, political art, there were gender issues, there were issues of, there were race issues, so much prejudice in so many ways. Artists, young artists, were just going into the streets and doing their own thing. And we loved that and decided that would be the basis of our group activist work. Go to the streets, don't wait for the gatekeepers that you were all talking about, just get it out there and see what happens.
That's powerful. actually Paul Ha, who is the director of the MIT List Visual Arts Center, um, lovely, lovely museum director in the Boston area who is a Brookline resident. I just asked, I'm just going to put his question out there because this is actually very interesting. Ana Mendieta was killed in 1985. Did that have any effect on forming for the Guerrilla Girls?
It didn't really affect our forming, but many of our members knew her. So it was a shocking event. It was a horrible event. I think it made us realize when we saw the justice system and the art world gather around her accused murderer, we realized how the cards were not stacked. They were stacked in his favor and not hers. And the injustice of all of it, it added fuel to the fire for sure. And particularly because her work at that point was so important, everybody knew about it. But she didn't have the kind of exposure and the kind of success that Carl Andre did. And that was also glaringly apparent when you looked at every part of the coverage of that horrible event.
Yeah. Well, thank you for asking that question, Paul. I'd like to move on just really briefly. We're going to show some images of the Guerrilla Girls' work. And while I show it, we'll just kind of have a back and forth. Feel free to jump in and give me some anecdotes or stories about these pieces. And then we'll also talk after that about the formation of the book and that process, because I think that's a really interesting conversation that we're here for. This is the first event talking about the book. Everyone, we're on the first stop of their book tour. So and also we had about like 300 something people registered. We have about 171. I just want to shout out to Lucy Kim, a professor at Boston University. She has made this tonight part of her student seminar class. So I'm thrilled. I'm absolutely thrilled. Okay, I'm going to share the screen. And then we're going to look at some images. All right. Can everyone see? Yeah? All right. So this was the piece that started it all, correct?
This isn't the first work we ever did, but it was our first time really taking our work to a larger audience instead of just the streets in the art neighborhoods, because we ran this on buses in New York.
You did. That's amazing.
Actually, it was supposed to be a billboard for the Public Art Fund, but when we submitted it, they didn't think it was clear enough. So we decided to run it as our own advertisements.
You know, if we hadn't done this poster, I mean, it's just a, you know, everyone participating in this today, I'm sure you've had these same kind of experiences. You just never know how life will work out. You know, something becomes hugely larger than you could ever expect. And for us, that is this poster, Do Women Have to Be Naked to Get into the Met Museum? Because, you know, we could have done a poster that said, there aren't enough women artists in the Met Museum, and we wouldn't be here talking to you today. Instead, we found a way into this issue by combining it with the fact that we all know that especially painting is just full of naked women, but there aren't any women artists there. And once you see this poster, I dare you to go into any museum in the whole world without starting to think what is on the walls and why.
Mm-hmm. And tell me about this process of creating this work. Did the Gigi's literally walk into the Met and survey every single thing that was on the wall?
Well, we decided to go to the Met Museum to count naked male figures in the artwork because, you know, the art world was so hetero, you know, it was all about hetero maleness. So we thought, well, let's see how many, you know, naked males there are. And then we also counted naked females, and it was so skewed, it was unbelievable. And at the same time, we noticed there were very few women artists, so we started counting them too. We really went there not knowing what we were going to find. It was sort of a detective, it was a detective project. And when we came out, we realized that there was an overwhelming number of naked women, and very few women artists. So all of a sudden it was like, let's put these two together and see what we've got. I have to say, once this went together, I think my knees were shaking when I first saw it. It's like, yes, this is it. We really are onto something, and it's irrefutable.
That's great. I mean, one of the things that I really love about the Guerrilla Girls is your humor. And I wanted to ask, I mean, are all of you funny, or is there one member who has the really witty joke, like just ready to go?
Well, lots of us are funny, and what we do in our own work and in our Guerrilla Girls work comes out that way. So we do have that going for us. But of course, you know, we deal with serious issues, and there is a real question, and I respect people who feel it's not possible and it's wrong to deal with these serious, important issues with humor. Luckily, we can help ourselves, and humor has really worked for us. And it is a great way to twist an issue around and kind of figure out a way into someone's mind in a different way that lets them take off with an idea and start thinking about it differently.
Actually, I have another idea about humor, and I think these deal with humor rather than just being funny. You know, there is a very subversive element to humor. All you have to do is think of Lenny Bruce or Richard Pryor or even Hannah Gadsby. To understand that humor has always been a weapon of the disadvantaged against those who oppress them. So I think that is a great power, and it tells truth too. Humor can reveal all kinds of truths in a very direct way. And we found that if you disagree with someone and you tell a joke and they laugh at it, well, you've got their brain, you know, you've got their attention. And then if you can back up that humor, that joke, that punchline with some information, well, you just might change their mind.
Right. I think that's brilliant. And every time I think about the Guerrilla Girls in the 80s, I think about Pryor and comedians like Richard Pryor, you know, who were really talking about, as you said, they were subversive, but they were talking about real issues, but funny as hell. And they made you uncomfortable as you were listening, and totally unforgettable. This one I love, and I actually was telling the Guerrilla Girls earlier today about my own little situation with this. You know, there's somebody in my life who I love very dearly, and was saying to me, "Oh, you know, you have this artist coming up in your exhibition program, and this person is Asian American. Maybe you should make this show in line with Asian American Pacific Heritage Month." And I thought, I just paused, and then this person who I love very dearly also paused and said, "That was really bad, right?" And, you know, I think it's one of these things. It's like, we are not, you know, I'm a woman of color, and I don't want to only be recognized during 1 month of the year. And, you know, also in my gallery program, if I show 4 Asian American artists in a row, then I show 4 Asian American artists in a row. You know, it doesn't have to be a marketing ploy or a very well-timed schedule. So,
May I just say, though, that when this poster was done a long time ago, that is what was happening. If any Black artists, if any women, if any artists of color were shown, it was all at a certain time. You know, February and March were like, you know, a big thing for that, but they'd show one, you know, and most of them showed the same one. And we're in a really, I mean, there's so many issues with museums, which we'll get into, big issues that we care about very much. But it is a time where museums are trying to play catch up, and they're collecting the work of women and artists of color, and they're showing it big time as they never, ever were before. And that's a really important moment, because museums are stuck with their collections of all these white guys. That's all they had. They need to, they'll never catch up but they got to try. They really got to try. And of course, let's be honest, for all the powers that be that run museums, there are people inside museums who've always cared about this, and they now have agency to really make it happen.
Yeah, let's
I
hope.
think there's something else that this poster points to, and we picked it up a little bit later. These commemorative months are wonderful, but if you really think about it, they are a form of tokenism. It's the month that you throw someone a bone. We took that up a little bit later in another poster called the top 10 ways to tell that you're an art world token. And it was just a crazy bunch of circumstances, like, your busiest months are, February, March, blah, blah, blah. At parties and openings, the only other people serving you, the only other people of color are serving you the drinks, on and on. And with that, we started to talk about tokenism, which was sort of the very early part of multiculturalism, when museums realized that there was something they had left out. And instead of really exploring, the rich diversity, they would show the same few artists and women of color and women artists and gay artists over and over and over again. And we wanted to ask the larger question, is tokenism, is it a solution, or is it a continuation of the problem of exclusion? I don't think there's an easy answer for that, but it needs to be thought about.
Interesting. I would be curious to hear what people's thoughts are. Now this piece is interesting. Can one of you tell me about this one?
People would keep telling us that we were so negative. All we do is complain, complain, complain. So we decided to write a super sweet letter to art collectors, informing them that their collections don't contain any art by women. And in a very sweet, ladylike way, we tried to say, we know that you feel terrible about this and will rectify the situation immediately. And of course, we had it on our cute pink stationery, but our little daisy at the top, that you can see at the top, is frowning, not smiling.
Yeah, I love it. And that's actually also now a tea towel, which I think is super subversive. I wanted to bring up this one because I think most people who follow Guerrilla Girls are quite aware of this. But if you're new to their practice, you should know that the Guerrilla Girls are not only about the art world, and in fact, they have spent decades focusing on just activist issues in general. So, would one of you briefly tell me about this one?
Sure. This was done as a spread in a classic magazine. Do you remember which magazine it was?
Mirabella, which of course folded immediately afterwards, I think.
Anyway, in the early 90s, there were so many political events that really grabbed our attention. The Gulf War, homelessness, AIDS, and we thought, well, let's take a look at that. And a kind of excuse that was given by ultra-conservatives for why things shouldn't change was this concept of natural law, something that's just natural. You don't need to explain it. It just always has been. So we wanted to.
May I just say, natural law was conservative religious war. Natural religious law. That's what it was. They used a nicer couple of words, natural law.
It's also used in legal arguments. But we thought we would take natural law and turn it on its head to prove how kind of ridiculous it was. Like, the people who have the most money are entitled to the best, health care. Well, protecting the rights of the unborn means precisely that. Once you're born, you're on your own. So we took those arguments because they were really they were used as an excuse for the status quo, for things not changing.
I mean, and again, the humor in number 7, where
Yes.
you knock out what I assume. It's just brilliant. It's great. All right, moving on. This one we can talk about briefly, but the cover of the New York Times Magazine with Arnie Glimcher from Pace, and his art world stars. I mean, what did that feel like to you, seeing this cover? And, you know, I mean, when you see this in the paper of record, you're like, what? Really? This is what we're going to talk about? But it was, and for decades. And the way that you put this on a poster, I thought was so funny.
Well, this came at a moment when we had all that stuff out there. You know, what we didn't say before, but I'll just briefly say, is when our first posters hit the street, it was a sensation, and it was really empowering to all kinds of artists, women artists, artists of color, and it was also really pissed off a lot of gallerists and white guys. So when we saw this was the cover of the New York Times, not one person noticed while they were shooting this cover that that it was all these white guys. Women artists in New York were just really, I mean, seriously, people were really pissed. So we did this for them. Hormone imbalance, melanin deficiency. We decided we better give this art world practice a medical diagnosis, and that was it.
This poster in my gallery, like in my office. I think that's my poster. Here's another one commenting specifically on the commercial gallery world. And what year was this from?
Well, this was like 1986,
I think it was 87. Yeah, 86, 87, somewhere.
Yeah. Well, it was so clear that it was difficult, you know, for white women, and it was doubly difficult for Black women. And when we started to run the numbers, we realized that not only was there discrimination operating, but there was also a sense of tokenism, because when you would find a gallery that would show, you know, a Black woman artist, they only showed one, with the exception of, you know, one, which I believe was Bernice Stamps. Let's see, who was it? It was Bernice Stamps. Anyway. Oh, no, it was Kevin Morris. That's right. Now I'm getting this all mixed in my head.
But
So
this is an advantage of how bad things were. I mean, that's what you have to keep coming back to. We weren't ever complaining because there were, you know, 50 of this, 13 of this, whatever. It was always 0, 1, 0.
Crazy. And I have a few examples of your work, and these are a little bit more recent. But the Guerrilla Girls, you know, you've basically created this movement where you are all over the world, and this is why we have people following this talk from all over the world. Your influence has permeated culture, transcended culture, language. Can you tell me quickly about how this first came about? You know, when did you do your first international non-English speaking project?
Good
I
question.
believe the first Spanish project we did was one of the film posters, the King Kong in Spanish.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and then we did we went to the Venice Biennale, although we didn't do anything in Italian there.
No, it wasn't,
Just
but
the
it was
title.
about.
Yeah, the title of one of the posters was Benvenuti alla Biennale Femminile.
How did you bridge that that language gap? Like, were you invited by a museum to create something for the first time, and that's how it kind of caught on with other countries, other institutions?
Yeah, I think our big break was there's this incredible Spanish curator named Xavier Araquistan, and we did posters in Spanish for an exhibition there. In Frida, do you remember? It's like 2003 or 4 or something like that.
2003, but we actually were in Mexico City before that.
No, that was because we didn't even do that poster until it was all around the same time, but that was a little later. Yeah. And we love doing things in other languages. Oh, and also, just if we're going art historical here, in our first book that we wrote called Confessions of the Guerrilla Girls in 1995, we had the advantages of being a woman artist translated into about 10 or 12 languages. Mm-hmm. And because we love working in other languages. The one you showed in Kochi, India, that was really challenging, and the Chinese ones also, because then you have to design in other characters, which we're, sometimes we have someone in the group with expertise, and other times we're going back and forth in a really interesting way to try to make sure we're breaking the thoughts or words correctly, and things like that. But it's really important to us. We've done things in Turkish. I mean, and often these institutions, we're not just translating our old posters, we're doing new projects, and those are, if it's in Germany, it is in German. There may be an English version as well. And in the recent years, museums invite us to do special projects attacking them right on their own walls. And we've done installations, videos, all kinds of crazy things, which usually they're very shocked when they see what we actually come up with.
You should know what they're getting into. Well, let's move on to the book. So, and we'll talk about this after I stop sharing the screen, but here's just a gorgeous image of the book laid out. And I can't stress enough how wonderful this book is, how nice it feels to have it in your hands and flip through it and just feel like a part of this chronology. But I also wanted to say that, I think it translates really well to the book. Can you tell me, I mean, we'll talk about this as well or later, or maybe we can do it now. I mean, what was the process like getting this, getting your posters and your works on different media into a hard book form?
Well, we wanted it to be a picture book. We didn't want to have a lot of, art speak or a lot of talk, and everything in it is written by us. And we really wanted it to be a collection of what we've done. And I mean, all of us have different attitudes towards it, but I think of it as a collection of knowledge. From beginning to end, you can see how the art world changed, how our thinking changed, how the problems morphed. And to me, it's just a very dense piece of artworks about history, about art history and the cultural situation.
To me, it was fascinating to have the idea to do a book of all of our work, conceptualize it, design it, and write it, as Frida said. And there's so many challenges involved. It's 192 pages, 400 photographs, because it also shows all the work in situ. And if we did something again in a different language, as we were talking about before, you'll see it in a different place. And we had some really interesting decisions to make, which, first of all, it's such a great idea for the Guerrilla Girls to do a book of the work itself. It's the story of the work, because the work has words. So you don't need long essays about placing it in anything.
Yeah.
You need the picture and maybe a little bit of contextualization, little paragraph if necessary. And you just get it yourself, and you see the trajectory of this work, how the issues run in and out through all of these years. And we wanted to keep it really simple. The work is the star. So the work is big. You can flip through it and really get a sense of this journey that all the members, there have been over 60 members of the Guerrilla Girls over the years, this journey that we've been on since the beginning. It's a labor of love.
And it also has a really interesting index. It was a challenge to do. We did it ourselves. It's got terminology that you wouldn't find in other indexes. Yeah. And if you want to know what we've done about ableism, if you want to know what we've done about
war,
phobia, it's all there in the index.
That's great. That's so great.
We also, by the way, have Easter eggs in the index, which I hope you'll all look through the book and try to find them. Some crazy stuff that doesn't belong in an index.
Oh, that's fun. Okay. I'm definitely going to look into that. So we're going to not end our talk, or end this presentation, this slideshow with this slide, the Guerrilla Girls Code of Ethics for Art Museums. And this is a big, big issue right now, as a lot of art museums are they're having to look inward in a lot of ways, and that's probably a nice way to say it. There are people who are, asking museums to reckon with their colonialist past, and most of our institutions in this country are embedded in colonialism. If you think about the collections, if you think about who provided those works of art, where they got those works of art, it's mostly white men, and it's mostly done through the means of colonial practices. And so there's a lot going on right now in the discourse. Tell me about this project and where you want to see this conversation go from here.
Well, the backstory of this.
Rita, I'll let you talk about it, but first of all, I just want to say, we think this monument should be outside of every museum in the country. Mm-hmm. And it's not just about what's in the museums, it's about the oppression of people who work in the museums, it's about every issue in society, every crap issue that we're dealing with now with the wealthy controlling things is in the art world too. So sorry for you, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, we did our first code of ethics, and it's also in the book, in 1989, and it was sort of told like the Ten Commandments in biblical language. And when things just started to become really sour in the art world just a few years ago, and the issue of museum culture started to come up again, we thought, well, let's go back to it. And there was so much, as Kata said, everything that's wrong in the larger world is wrong with the art world, and then it gets expressed through museums. And the museums, are oftentimes, too driven by collectors, run by collectors, not by particular expert people in art. And oftentimes they're people who make their money in very nefarious ways. But we're stuck with this system that's philanthropy is what funds American museums, which is why they are having such trouble during this pandemic. It's weird that the art market is going up and museums are closing. It's just a weird dichotomy there. But we realized that so many of the trustees, they manufacture opioids, they manufacture rubber bullets and weapons of state control. They invest in for-profit prisons, or they fraternize with pedophiles like Jeffrey Epstein. But they get to whitewash their reputations by giving money to art and culture. And that's really a lousy way to deal with things. And if we're stuck with that system, why not? Why shouldn't museums find trustees who, in their lives, make the world a better, not a worse place?
If they can.
So the goal is this is obviously a mock-up, but how do we help the Guerrilla Girls make this a real?
Okay. So we have to wait till we can actually truck it around. So our idea at the moment, because let's face it, we're not going to make a giant, marble or concrete monument anytime soon, although there should be one. So we're thinking a giant banner that's mounted on board with wheels on the bottom, and it folds up. So we can just take it to every place in the country. And also, I hope all of you out there will just take a look at this and see, it really is everything museums should be doing and everything they're not. And as I know this is a very sophisticated audience, I'm sure you're all aware of what a huge mess it is in museums right now. They've been firing people during the COVID while the directors get millions of dollars. There have been a lot of issues of people working there speaking up on how they've been discriminated against at work. There are unions forming. It's a really important moment. Museums do need to be reinvented. They can't just be investment banker 101. There's so much more to art. There's so many incredible ideas of all kinds being explored in art that belong in the museums. And the choosers of what's in the museums just can't be this small group of people.
It's kind of shocking during the pandemic when museums were furloughing people and then firing mostly people who were involved in unions. Um, why someone like Leon Black, who had $40 million to finance 2 galleries in the New MoMA, why couldn't he kick in, some money to keep the education department going at the Museum of Modern Art? That
Baffling.
museum staffs in Canada or in many places in Europe did not face that kind of layoff. What it does is it just bites at the center of the museum, and the people who get furloughed, of course, are the people who are barely making a living wage anyway. If you look at the salary structures in museums, you realize that it sort of parallels what happens in corporate culture, where the head of the corporation makes 1,000 times more than the person at the sort of bottom of the pay scale, which is kind of shocking. And those are the people who go first.
I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm gonna. In my past life, I did an appraisal in one of my older jobs at Leon Black's home.
Can you talk about it, or did you have to sign a non-disclosure agreement?
I don't work there anymore. But look, I was actually a Chinese works of art specialist, so I wasn't doing the contemporary or modern. He has an amazing collection. There were there's a Japanese Buddha statue that I just was gaga over. But, we also had like a general appraiser person who had to just go through, there were 50 fancy canes and, just things that were extremely valuable. And I'm not saying that, he doesn't deserve to own them. Of course he does. But I think
he's Jeffrey Epstein's enabler. I'm sorry. He gave $50 million to Jeffrey Epstein or more after Epstein's conviction for sex trafficking in 2008. And he remained his close friend. They saw each other. He gave him stuff. No, this guy has got to go.
So did you ever see Jeffrey Epstein while you were at Leon Black's?
I never even saw the man himself. It was the staff, so it was like the staff would prepare everything. And then I think I did like the Westchester home and the Hamptons home. Anyway, that's all I'll say about that on the record. But, there's, I've seen it. I have seen intimately the lives of someone like him. And, I will say that, if you compare, the frontline worker at the MoMA front desk and all that they need, right, just to make their next paycheck or make their next rent check, there's a lot that museum boards can help with, and some of them I'm sure are already feeling like they can help, but it's just the way that you kind of change the direction. I serve on a board as well. I serve on a very small nonprofit board for ISCP, which is the International Studio and Curatorial Program. It's in Brooklyn. We are not like a mega, millionaire board, but I am always trying to think about how I can reframe the structure of giving for art institutions, because it's too dependent, I think, on having to create auctions that, we're asking artists to donate artworks to, and then, nobody really wins in that way.
Well, we've never lived under that economy. We sell posters for $30. Anyone who has $30 can have one of our posters, and it's the same poster that's in the Museum of Modern Art, whatever. We don't create scarcity or precious, objects. Precious objects really play into the idea of capitalism really well, because they become more and more expensive, and they become a kind of status symbol, and people fight to pay more money for them. And then museums everywhere have the same small handful of artists whose work costs the most. Culture is much richer than that, and we've never played that game. We actually have made our way into museum collections without ever having, had a gallery or been involved in that sort of collector-ish, stuff. Our supporters are people who have our posters on their dormitory rooms.
Yeah, or these
stickers, right? Yeah. But also, let's talk about artists for a second, because you're absolutely right, Frida. Part of the problem is these unique objects have become so expensive And the big collectors and the big multinational galleries want to sell everything for millions of dollars. Let's just take a step back for a second, because there's always going to be, you cannot stop people from drawing, painting, taking photographs, making things. And thank goodness for that. There's so many incredible things. The system completely sucks. So we are not going to, we do believe exactly what Frida said. We do a political art, we give it away for free, we sell it for nominal amount to keep our group running, and that is what we care about and what we want to do. But we respect and admire every single person who's an artist who does it their own way, in their own media and in their own, they don't do it to make millions, they do it to change the world, to change art and to change the world. And we support that, and it's always going to be there. It's like when computers first came in, what was one of the first things they figured out how to do? Get it so people could draw on a computer, you know, not just type in words. There's always going to be amazing visual art of every type, and including today, incredible political art all over the place. It's exploding, and it uses a lot of the same kind of advertising strategies and techniques that we do, and it upends people's notions about what's right in the world and what we have to do to give people in this world, everybody, decent income, decent education, decent life.
You know, European art, which, you know, of course, we're all spoon-fed in school, because, you know, American culture is sort of thought of as an outgrowth of that, although that really is totally inadequate, you know, idea of our culture. Our culture is so much richer than that. But in any case, you know, European art was sort of based on the taste of the aristocracy. You know, the works that kings and queens and you know, emperors had were not things that people on the street saw. And you know, if anything about the democratic age improved, is that all of a sudden art could be the expression of mass, you know, of mass taste. And unfortunately, the art world is going in the other direction. Now it's really becoming the taste of the super rich. And the larger question is, can that really be a history of our culture? When you have a big, teeming, democratic, you know, culture that produces film and music and theater and all kinds of art forms that are really based on mass taste, why is it that the art world is run on the taste of, you know, a handful of billionaire collectors? I think you could say that that's not the history of art. That's the history of wealth and power.
I'm worried about questions. Will we have time for
No,
some?
we're gonna get to questions ASAP because there's so
I
many.
know, the time just got away from us.
Some of the things that we're going to talk about, but that's okay. So some of these questions touch on these issues. First of all, I've seen a couple of people ask, how do I become a Guerrilla Girl?
That's the question we hate to hear, because unfortunately we've never been a group that's open to members. You know, our dirty little secret is, although we've had so many members over the years, diverse in every way, at any one time we're fairly small. Because if you look at the work we've done as a group, you could never do work like that with 100 people, you know, 200 people. We have to be more like a cell, so we could, you know, so we managed to agree and craft our work so that, and try it out so that it always works. So you can't join the Guerrilla Girls, but I know so many of you are doing incredible work and thinking about all these issues, and we really want to encourage you to just do something. You see something wrong, you know, just put up something in a bathroom, you know, send nasty letters to people, and of course do everything you can, you know, in social media to change the dialogue about all these issues, which I'm sure many of you are doing already.
Actually, the world needs more than one, you know, group of feminist masked avengers. But the wonderful thing about the last 5 years in the art world is there's so many wonderful groups, you know. It's exploding. You know, there's Decolonize This Place, Change the Museum, A Better Guggenheim, Yeah,
Black Lives
culture.
Matter, you know, the most important movement of our day.
Yeah, Black Lives Matter, Me Too. There are just so many activists, so many people who are devoting their lives to making the world a better place that you know, we're cooked. You know, we're doing our work, but I think anyone who wants to be an activist should find their own voice and just do it.
I don't think we're cooked. We are always trying to do it better. We love doing this work, and I just can't imagine not spending as much time as I can trying to push these ideas forward, push this rock up the hill.
Well, that kind of segues into a question from Chantal, who asks if you can talk about the style of your collaborations, how you work together, because you know you are on different coasts. I know I've tried to ask before, how many of you are there? Where are all of you? And that's always a, you know, don't ask me that because I'm not going to answer. But I know that
I don't know.
I think that over time it's been a fluid group. You know, the two of you are two of the co-founders, but how, you know, from what I remember when I worked with the Guerrilla Girls years ago, you had to agree by consensus, right? Like there was a strong feeling that all of you had to really, you know, agree as a whole to move forward with a project or, you know, do the next thing. Is that still true?
Well, collective work is kind of messy, and you always have to find your own level. And you know, every project is a little bit different depending on who comes to the project with an idea and who has certain skills. And it's all. I don't think there's any method to it except that we keep going and we keep working at it. And you know, some people are not really trained to work collectively, and sometimes that doesn't work. You know, they're trained to express themselves. You know, not find a you know a collective message.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think there's any one way of doing it. We just try it. Um, we have worked from time to time on consensus. If someone really disagrees with what we're doing in the group, well, we have to appreciate that and understand that. And everyone has a different skill set. The books take completely different attention span than do single projects. So
Right.
I don't know. I mean,
Can I add something though? I mean, we were formed to do posters.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we're still here, because we weren't formed to think about, oh, what should we do? You
Right.
know, the idea was to do posters, and a specific kind of poster that kind of presents things in a very in-your-face, different way. So we have had so many challenges and people who so many wonderful people in the group over the years. But I think the fact that we were about producing this kind of work, now, of course, we can do it as I strangled myself.
that was a big
40-foot billboards, you know, or 100-foot, you know, this or that. But we're still trying to, you know, deepen our critique, deepen what we're doing. But that's what we do. So it's not like we have to sit around thinking, oh, what, you know, start from scratch each time. We're
Right.
playing this forward.
Right. But one thing I do know about your collective is that, you know, individual members take on different responsibilities, right? So, that's what I've experienced. I mean, when I ordered a wholesale product, like I ordered these awesome erasers that I'll be carrying. These are my favorite things. I can't wait to erase everything. And, you know, these are the air fresheners. I'm sure you have someone who works with Third Door Down for that type of collaboration. I know that Zubaida Aga, the Guerrilla Girl that I am very close to, she loved the statistics. Like that was, she said she loved it. She loved that was something she was really.
statistics.
Yeah.
Basically.
I mean, how, you know, so some of you must, you know, take on, right, certain roles, like that's your set of responsibilities.
Yeah, everyone agrees on what we're doing, but in terms of working on things, yeah, people bring their ideas and bring what they care about. Zubaida was very instrumental in this huge exhibition we did at Whitechapel Gallery in London, where we sent questionnaires to 400 European institutions and made this crazy exhibition out of what some of them sent back. And by the way, almost 200 of them, I think, did not send the questionnaires back. So for those people, we put their names on a big mat on the floor and invited viewers to walk on them. But she did the spreadsheets, the question, you know, I mean, we all work on it, but she was incredible. I mean, there's nothing she can't do anyway.
Right. We love you, Zubeida Aga. I love you so much. So people are obsessed with the air freshener. I am obsessed with it too. Sounds like
Show the back. Show the back.
You gotta,
yeah.
This is what it says on the back. Eliminate the stench of patriarchy, Guerrilla Girls.
We had a big argument over what word to use for whether stench or stink or for some of the other words we were considering.
Well, that was Zubaida's idea too. The stench, whatever way we were going to say it, but there's something of patriarchy. It's so cool.
There's also these bandanas behind me. So this is the thing. I mean, and there were some of these questions in the Q&A about how you I mean, you already touched on this, but the fact that nothing is unique, exclusive, everything is accessible to everybody. And I have to say, you know, like in my gallery, I am showing fine art from, you know, artists practicing today, but I also very, very much felt strongly that it was important to include art books and art objects such as this in the gallery so that, you know, the 16-year-olds, lots of 16-year-olds walk through this neighborhood. And I know that they go to Booksmith because my kid spends all of her money at Booksmith when she has a little bit of money. But, you know, come on in and buy this. And then I'll say to you, well, you just became an art collector. You just engage with it, you know, and you can come back and buy more. It's all there. And it's not out of reach for you. Like, this is not a conversation that is, you know, out of reach. And it's not, you know, only for the 1% or for a rich collector's daughter. You know, it's something that you can engage with. So I want to thank the two of you and all the GGs for making this kind of market really good and okay and viable for the rest of the art economy, because the art economy needs to diversify. It cannot sustain itself in this, you know, high top echelon, multi-tier, multi-million-dollar Art Basel-esque type of environment. There are too many artists who are working, you know, in all different media and all different price ranges, and they're all legitimate. That's my main thing. We're already 4 minutes past, but can I ask like 2 more questions? Is that okay? Okay, cool. One is a question I'm going to ask that's an audience question, then I have my own, and we'll end with my own. So I apologize to everybody. There's so many questions. All I say about that is, like, honestly, buy the book. And I think a lot of your answers might be, questions might be answered in this way, but maybe we'll have to have another talk another time. This is a question from Amy Whitaker. Can you speak to how and why anonymity has been important? And I think that's a really good question. Thank you, Amy.
Well, when we started out, it was kind of self-protective. You know, the art world was a much smaller place, and we were just starting out, and we never had an idea that this would be something we'd do for 30 years. You know, we were making trouble because we wanted to get somewhere in that system, and we didn't want to bite the hand that fed us. So it was just protective. There was also, I mean, there's a long history of anonymous free speech in the United States, especially in the American Revolution. You know, key documents of the revolution were written under pseudonyms. So we didn't realize that at the time, and we also didn't, you know, make the connection to masked avengers who are usually, you know, hide their real identities. But soon, as you know, as things sort of developed, we realized that it was a great strategy, and what it did is it depersonalized the issue, so that someone couldn't complain about one of our posters because of what one of us or two of us or any of us did or did not have in our own lives. Mm-hmm. So at that point, we realized this is something we have to stick with. I'm not sure that it sits well in the age of authenticity. If you know, there's questions you can ask about that because everyone wants transparency. But anyway, it's what we did, it's what worked for us, and I don't think anyone really cares to know who we are anymore. It doesn't matter.
The thing is bigger than all that. But yeah, I mean, things just happen. You know, we decided to be anonymous, and without the work, there would be no Guerrilla Girls. But without our crazy identity, that has really helped us too. And both of those things came to us by chance. But over these years, we've just really tried to work with it and make most of it as we can. And also, may I just say one comment, just to everybody who is here today. We can't really answer the individual questions because there are so many in the chat, but we're looking at these incredible comments and questions that you have put in, and just can't thank you enough for your support, and we support you too.
That's great, Katja. Thank you.
And we have an active Instagram account and Facebook page, so you may be able to make your comments there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we're going to read them all. I just wish we could have typed everyone back.
Well, you know, and I'm looking forward to the day when the Guerrilla Girls are back speaking in auditoriums, and we have that kind of collective vibration, you know, in the room, and everyone is doing this at the end, and, you know, getting just images where everyone in the audience is putting on the mask over their face, and it's like we're all Guerrilla Girls, and that's what's cool, is like, you know, you don't have to officially be a Guerrilla Girl, like you said before, you know, just take action. So here's the last question. I'm going to close it out. There were so many questions about like technical things, but yes, if you ordered a book, it will be shipping. I will also be carrying the book. I will also be carrying the book at the gallery. It opens December 9th. We will have an e-com shop. You can also order merch and books on the Guerrilla Girls website. So there's so many ways to get it. Just don't go on Amazon, okay? That's all I ask.
Right.
And definitely go to Booksmith, my favorite bookstore in the whole world. So here's my question to each of you. What right now pisses you off the most that you want to take action on in your art?
Well, it pisses me off that we've gone through, you know, a horrible 4 years, but let's face it, there's no guarantee that the next 4 years will be any better, because our government there are some wonderful people. It's just like any place. There's some great people in government, and there are a lot of people who are just entrenched, and who even knows why they went there in the first place. And somehow, as a country, our system, maybe because the power of the states, maybe because the moribund federal government, you know, especially these last 4 years, we just have not done our job in giving our people what they need, working on climate change, working against racism, against sexism, having real great education in this country, and planning for the future in this country. So that's what I'm pissed off about.
Everything.
Well, I think what concerns me is even if Trump is gone, he's not gone from the art world. All of the values that Trumpism is sort of based on: money at the top, exploitation at the bottom, nothing in the middle, money laundering, smuggling, insider trading, exploitation of all kinds, exists in the art world and probably will until the economic structure of the art market is somehow, changed. So I would just remind everyone out there to realize that the art world is not an escape, from right-wing politics. And we really need to resist that, and we need to make the art world that we want to work in.
Yeah.
And that's going to be, that's what we should reset. And there are so many incredible activists out there working towards that end right now, producing, the most important work and the most, the most significant and the most game-changing. So let's keep it all up.
Thank you both. And thank you to the whole collective. Thank you to everyone who participated. I am just thrilled for this event. I hope you have the best virtual book tour that we are all waiting for the next one, because I know that everyone's going to take these questions over to the next event.
Well, check our website, and we'll have the next one. We're actually going to have a great conversation with Jetta Sandal, who is the head of a European museum collective, about how to rebuild, how to reshape, how to recreate museums. She got in a lot of trouble with a lot of other museum directors at the latest conference, and we can't wait to talk to her.
Awesome. And, you know, there are a lot of, because we're in Boston, there are a lot of students and professors listening. And I will say, like, when I was an art history student in undergrad, I took an art and economics graduate seminar. And I understand that this is a really interesting way for like an econ student who's also an art history student to look at how this structure can be changed and dismantled, and, you know, better serve the public and the artists. But I know that's a huge dream, but there are young people out here doing the work. So, you know, show us what you got.
Art is built on dreams.
Yeah. Well, thank you all. And Kata and Frida, you two are the best. And this will be recorded. So Brookline Booksmith will be sending a link to the event. Oh, hello, Brookline Booksmith.
Hi, I just wanted to come on and say thank you all so much. Those questions were amazing. And Frida and Kate, I can send you the chat and everything so you can see that.
Oh, please, that would be amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Good.
Well,
Okay.
thank you all so
Thank
much.
you, Ing, so much.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Bye-bye.